We are going to start working with coils today. We're going to work on our coil vessel, and I'm asking you to make a sculptural coil vessel, and that's because I want it to be unique and just not a regular old pot. So I'm going to walk you through two basic ways of getting started with a coil vessel. And really, the hardest part about this project is you managing the material. And I think that's like the common thread in ceramics is you figuring out when you can build and when you need to let it dry. So you need to manage your vessel and you need to make sure that it is in the leather hard stage as you build, each layer going up. So you're going to build, maybe 3 or 4 levels, and then you're going to let it dry. And you're going to let those coils, the previous coils, firm up so that they'll hold their shape and they'll hold the weight of the additional coils. And I think that's the most difficult thing about this project. The next hard part is you being able to roll coils. And some students can get it really quick, and some it takes a little bit of time. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through rolling coils, and I'm going to roll out a fair amount. And I kind of recommend that you do this anyway. Number one, it's going to teach you how to roll coils more proficiently. And 2, you can wrap them up and keep them plastic so that you can just, build a little bit faster. Okay. The problem is if you build too quickly and you don't let your vessel dry down, like I mentioned, it's going to collapse under its own weight. So hopefully with the projects that you've already accomplished, you'll have kind of figured out how to work with those drying times and keeping your work leather hard. So I'm just going to start by grabbing a couple chunks of clay, and I'm going to wind up rolling them out and creating coils or snakes of clay. And then we'll actually start building the vessel. So just starting with the clay in your hands, kind of get it started. Okay, and then you're going to put it down on the tabletop. And you're going to roll. And if you notice, I'm rolling from the tip of my finger to the heel of my hand, complete like this. And I'm varying the amount of pressure I'm putting down. Okay, if your coil starts to become oblong like that, then you need to make sure that when it's at its high point and your hand is pressing against the table, that you're putting a little bit more pressure down. And then when you're at the low point, that you're not pressing so hard, so you can kind of make it round. So you do have to vary the amount of pressure that you're actually putting on it. And to make the coil longer, you can see that I'm starting in the center and I'm rolling out. Okay, so that's a really good length for a coil, so I'm going to leave that one there. You're looking for something that's about the thickness of your pinky. Okay, so that's pretty good. Any thinner, then you're going to need too many to build. Any fatter, then you're starting to waste clay. At least for the size that we're going to build, and we're going to build a vessel that's about 9 inches tall. So start in the center and roll out. And that's going to stretch the coil. And once again, we're looking for coils that are about the same thickness. Okay. You can see that it's a little thick here, so I'm going to push a little bit harder in the center, and then I'm going to even out that pressure. And I'm constantly feeling with my hands and thinking about where I'm at. Okay. And I really find that standing up and rolling coils is actually easier to do. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but whenever I try to roll coils and I'm sitting down, I don't know if it's my leverage over the clay, but it makes it just a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to roll out this last piece, and then I'm going to stop, and then we'll get started in construction. And one thing that I will say is that you will either really love this process or you will completely hate it. There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground. And if you notice, I pressed a little too hard here and it's too thin. So just break it. And now you have a couple short ones. Okay. So we're going to get started building. There are basically, like I said, there are about 2 different ways to really get started. One is just spiraling it, which I'll show you first. And then the next one is using a pinch pot to jump off of. And I kind of like the pinch pot one only because you just spring off the form a little bit faster. And I think I feel like I have a little bit more control. And it's also kind of ties back into traditional building methods with a lot of Native Americans, where they start with a formed pinch pot-like form. So I'm going to show you both. Okay, so to start with, the idea being is that you're going to take your coil and you're literally going to curl it up like this to create the base. Okay, and you're going to keep doing this until you find the fat or the width of the bottom of your vessel. And this is all going to depend on what you've designed in your sketchbook or what's in your mind's eye. So like that could be it, and then I can start building vertically. Okay, now the problem is, if you hadn't noticed, I didn't score this. And that is usually where people start to hate this process, is everything has to be scored and has to be slipped. Otherwise, it falls apart. And if you don't have good compression, you'll develop cracks. And that's where a tool like this you'll just fall in love with. If you don't have a scoring tool, your next best option is the fork. Okay? Because you literally have to score this entire coil, and this is where it becomes really time consuming. Okay, and a tool like this where you can make more than one mark at a time, it changes so much. Because if you're going to use your needle tool, then you literally have to score like this, and notice that I'm really carving in. Okay, and then I got to go back. So it takes a lot of time if you're just using your needle tool. So I totally recommend one of these guys. I don't remember how much I paid for it. I got it at ChineseClayArt.com. But if you don't want to spend any money, just go and raid your kitchen cabinet, because this works. It totally works. Okay, remember, you're trying to rough it up to create more surface area and more nooks and crannies to let this slip bite into. Okay, and then you're going to slip it. Now, if you add too much slip and this gets really soupy, it's going to make your coils even more plastic. And it's going to make it so that it's harder for you to actually build, because it is going to come so soft that it might actually collapse. Now, as I'm coiling this, I'm making sure that my score marks match up. Okay, and I'm actually compressing. And that is one of the most important things about coiling, is that you are actually compressing the coils together. Okay, so make sure that you're compressing. You want that slip to squirt out. Okay, and now you're going to take your finger and you're going to blend. And if you don't want to use your finger, you can use your wooden modeling tool with the sculptor's thumb. All right, you can use this, but you're smearing over those edges. Okay, that reinforces your clay wall. If you leave it like that, there's a good chance that you could get cracks. Now, if you did a really good job bonding that and you compressed, you're probably okay. Sometimes people will leave it as a design element, but if you really want a strong build, then you're going to want to seal it. Kind of like the mortar between bricks. Okay, and remember, for this project, I'm asking you to build 9 inches tall. So you need to figure out how wide you're going to go, because I want you at least 9 inches. So that's about the span of my hand here. From here to there is about 9 inches. And you need to learn how to control the direction of your vessel, okay, and how you stack your coils. So here's my base, okay. So you can start this way, okay, using coils like that. Okay, I'm going to put this aside and I'm going to show you the second way of getting started. Okay, and it is completely up to you on how you want to do this. This way, you're starting with the pinch pot, and this is really closely aligned with indigenous peoples' pots. A lot of indigenous people in the Americas will start pinch pots similar to this. It's not exactly the same way, but the concept is the same. Okay, so you're starting with the pinch pot. Okay, so if you flatten it out, okay, now obviously this one's a little bit bigger. Okay, but the idea is basically the same. Okay, so instead of having a flat disc, you're already kind of starting with a little bit of vertical direction, which I think is a little bit faster. And since you're pinching, you're compressing the clay and making it stronger as well. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside because I'm going to show you how to build this way, but you can do it this way as well, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay. The most important thing is figuring out your shape and then knowing how to get there. You're going to start to coil, just like a spring, your ropes of clay. Now, I'm not scoring these yet because I'm just going to show you how to create a vertical cylinder. Okay, this has no direction, it's just straight up. And literally, you're just going straight up on top of each other. And you can kind of see how you can build really quickly, and possibly so quickly that your clay cannot stand up. Okay, now obviously you need to score and slip in between. Okay, but you can see how I'm kind of creating a cylinder. And if I just kind of, obviously I've got some bad gaps here, right? But you can see what I'm doing. Okay, if you stack straight on top, you're going to go vertical. You're going to go like a cylinder. Okay. Now, if you want to play with your shape, which I want you to do because I want this to be sculptural, I want it to be fun and inventive. If you start by putting the coils on the outer edge of the previous coil, okay, so I'm stacking it on its outer edge, then you're going to start changing the shape, and the shape is going to start to belly out. Now, the angle that you put it on, that preceding coil, is going to change how quickly it goes out. If you go out too quickly, you'll lose your strength and it'll just turn into a flat plate. Okay, but you can see how it's getting wider. Okay, and you can see how that kind of goes. Now, obviously, I still haven't scored yet. The wider you go, the more clay you're going to use. Okay. Now, let's say that you want to go in instead. Okay. So instead of going on the outside edge or on the vertical straight top, you're going to start to go in. And you're going to go on the inside edge. Okay. And you can see how it's getting narrower and narrower, and then you can start, you know, really kind of playing and start going into maybe like a cylinder. And now you're starting to get like a bottle form. Okay, but you can see how it goes in. So you can use all three of those different techniques to create the shape. Okay, and you should, and I want you to. I want it to be inventive. So you can start maybe with the belly and go into a thin neck, or maybe you go in and then you go out. Like, that's up to you and your design. Okay, but I'm going to start building, and I'm going to start attaching these things so you can kind of see how it actually really works. Okay, and the shape that I have in my head, I'm actually going to go out a little bit and then come in to a thin collared neck and then go straight up, and then I'm going to flare a couple times. Okay, so I'm going to start by putting the coil on the edge here. So I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to score the edge. And remember, we really do want to score both sides. So I'm just going to score my base here, and then I'm going to score my coil as I get started. Okay. And I really do like to make hatches. I like to go with X's. I just think that you get a rougher surface that way. Okay, so now I've scored one side, which is a really great start, but that is not the last scoring I'm going to do, even with this coil. Okay, so I'm now putting my slip on, and like I said, I'm going to start on the outside edge, and I'm compressing. I'm pushing in. You can see the slip starting to squirt out, which is a great sign that I'm compressing hard enough. Okay, now I get to here. I have to score this section now. And this is where people start to be like, oh my God, I can't stand coiling. It's really not that bad. Like I said, though, you will figure out pretty quickly whether or not this is something that you enjoy doing or something that you can't stand. So I'm continuing to go on that outside edge, and I'm compressing as I go. Okay, and now I'm back here, and now I have to score again. Oop. Okay, and you can start to see how I'm coiling out. Now, it is important to compress. We want that slip to squirt out. Okay, now it's kind of hard to show you this as I'm building, but I want to support my shape with one hand as I'm compressing. Okay, because I don't want to change my shape. I just want to reinforce it. So I'm using one hand to compress and one hand to hold the shape. Okay. Now, I really do, like every 3 levels or so, I want to do this. Okay, and like I said, you can use your wooden tool, but I want to smear and I want to blend in those layers so that I'm reinforcing as I build. You don't want to wait until you're 20 layers high, because then you might not be able to get your hand inside again, or you might not be able to get your tool inside. So it's really important that as you build, you're blending, and as this firms up, I will get those tool marks out. Okay, so I want to do that on the inside, and I want to do that on the outside. So as I do it on the outside, I'm going to support the inside. Just like this. And I know it's kind of hard to see from your vantage point, but I'm smoothing out. Okay, and like I said, you're going to support and you're going to smooth. You're going to support and you're going to smooth. So you got your hand on the outside of the form and you're smoothing the inside, or you have your hand on the inside and you're smoothing the outside, and you do that all the way around. I'm going to put another coil on here, and then I'm going to transition to that that form so you can see how they go. Okay. And if you notice, as I'm building, this is still pretty plastic, so I'm really going to have to stop soon, and I'm going to have to let this firm up. Okay, because I really do want to be able to have it keep its shape as I build. Otherwise, it will deform itself and eventually it'll collapse in on itself and I'll have to start all over again. And I can't tell you how many students I have had who think that they're doing an amazing job and they literally wrap up their project for the afternoon or for the evening and they come back the next day, they open up their bag and it's completely collapsed on them because it was too wet when they wrapped it up and it literally goes. And this is one of those times where I like my slip to be a little bit thicker because it's adding less moisture to the overall vessel. Okay, notice that I left off here. Okay, so I'm going to start and I'm going to overlap. I'm not actually going to start right there. I'm going to start here so I overlap the form so I don't have any holes. Okay, and I'm going to keep putting it on that outside edge until I get to the shape that I'm looking for. Okay, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to score again. Okay, and once again, I'm going to support, okay, and I'm going to compress. I'm really trying to create a good bond, trying to make sure there's no openings or any holes, okay, and then once again, I'm going to start to smooth. And it doesn't matter what direction you go. You can go down, or you can switch and go up. But notice that once again, I'm supporting the outside as I smooth the inside. And you can see that this is really soft. Okay. Which means I'm going to have to stop and let this firm up. Because if I keep building, it's going to start to collapse on itself. So I'm actually going to let this dry. So I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to pick up this one and show you how to just, build a different way. Okay, and ultimately I'm going to finish one of them, but I won't finish both. Okay, so I'll take my tool, and it literally is the same thing. The only difference is we've got this jump start. And that's kind of why I like when I do pinch pots, which honestly I will tell you is not frequently. It is not my favorite method of building. If I'm going to build a symmetrical vessel like this, I'd rather throw it on the potter's wheel than hand build it. I usually only hand build when I'm sculpting or doing slab work or the kiranuki. This to me is tedious. But it is really important to learn, and you might find that this is like your favorite method of building of all time. And this is an ancient building technique. There's people are still doing this all the way across the world. You can build vessels, huge vessels to ferment wine in or kimchi. They're used across the world. This is a very ancient building technique that is still readily used today by people across the world. And it is fast. When you build those really big pots, your coils are like this big. And you can even use coils in throwing on the wheel too. So you'll start throwing a pot and maybe you do like 30, 40 pounds. And then you add a really large coil. You attach it and then you throw the coil and then you add another coil. So it does have its use in throwing on the wheel as well, which is kind of cool. I do prefer throwing on the wheel because I could already have my vessel made by now. I think it's just faster. And I find it more fun. But I didn't say that. Okay. So you can see how you can build a lot faster if you start with the pinch pot base. You still have to compress. Okay, because see that hole right there? We don't want that. So when we compress, it disappears. Okay, and I'm trying to support it, and as I'm doing this, it's much easier working on the tabletop, but I'm trying to show you. So then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to smooth on the outside, support it on the inside, smooth on the inside, support on the outside. And you're just going to keep building, okay? So I'm not going to keep this one. I'm going to let it go like this, and I'm going to put it back in my bag because I want to keep using this clay. And I'm going to continue on with this one. After letting it dry probably for a couple hours, I want the base to be leather hard, okay? And then as I add more coils, let's say I add 5 more, then I want to stop, and I want those 5 coils that are new to become the same consistency as the bottom. I want them to always be leather hard. Remember, leather hard is one of the firmest and strongest states. So that's why it'll hold its shape better as we continue to add layers upon layers. So I'm going to let this dry I'm going to finish smoothing it out. I'm going to let it dry to leather hard, and then I'm going to keep it wrapped up and hydrated, spraying it with water, and then I will add some more layers, smooth it out, let it dry, add some more layers, and I'll keep changing the shape. Okay? So I'll see you in a bit once this is dried down and not so floppy.